Okay.
Mhm.
Wait. So, here we are. So my name is Frank. I use they them their pronouns. I am a drag queen. And that's my like number one form of art that I do. But I also create a lot of other kinds of art, and that that's me in a teeny tiny little nutshell. Um, and I am a feminist, activist, leftist, and that's why we are here. That's what we do. We talk about the things that bother us, pretty much. Um, yeah, Melora.
All right. Yeah, my name my name's Melora. Um, and yeah, so I use she her pronouns, and yeah, I would consider myself to be an activist, an intersectional feminist, an ally, a creative, and yeah, all around like music enthusiast. So yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, the topic this week is cancel culture and taking accountability. Um, some buzzwords that people like to use a lot. And so we're going to be talking about them through our perspective and through um, some other people's experiences that have been um,
Mm.
shared with us. Yeah, so that's that's the uh, topic for today. Um, and I mean, I think let's start there. What do you think cancel culture is, Lauren?
Um, I mean, whenever I think of like the word culture, I think of something that's kind of like not really questioned, like it's something that's like developed, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
then over time, it just becomes so prevalent that it's kind of a no-brainer that that's something that you do, I guess. So, um, or just when I say prevalent, I mean like more common and whatnot. Like, and so people just end up like doing that. But with cancel culture specifically, sorry, that wasn't like a very direct answer. But with cancel culture specifically, I think, like I said, the word culture is something that's not questioned. It's something that's just done because that's what other people do, I guess. It's something that's very whatever. But when the word cancel is brought up specifically, obviously it kind of brings to mind kind of like ostracizing people,
Mm-hmm.
like because they have either there are people who actually do things that are bad. Obviously no one's saying that people don't do things that are bad. There are people who are bad or people who do bad things, and of course they don't end up saying sorry or they don't whatever because that's just something that they do. But um yeah, it's just like ostracizing people because you think that they've done something that's unforgivable or like unacceptably or like unacceptable, and so sometimes with that it can be with cancel culture, it doesn't really give people like a chance either because yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that you know you made it. I really liked what you said about like when something is a culture, it's like something that's not uh, challenged, And I think that that is a really big issue with the way that we communicate, particularly on the internet, which I think, when people think of cancel culture, they usually are thinking of the internet because, we are not very good at holding each other accountable in real life spaces anymore. Um,
Hmm.
which for me is one of the biggest issues with like cancel culture that I have is that it's like all happens online, and there's no, it's not an actual communication between two people. It's like a public forum that this is all being projected onto instead of a communication between people, usually. Um, and like you said, I mean, it's like a group thinking, rather than having people when somebody gets canceled. A lot of the time, people take that with uh, as the truth, and as that they deserve to be canceled. Like there's no questioning of what happened. People aren't thinking for themselves like, did this person deserve to be canceled in this way? So I think that there's this strange like group mentality to it as well. Um, there's something else you said that I was going to comment on. I'm losing it. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I definitely think, um, sorry, the doorbell just rang. um, yeah, cancel culture is very interesting because I don't know, like, it kind of just seems otherworldly, like something that can't be, sorry, I keep like trying to swallow, like,
yeah, you're fine.
um, yeah, I like, whenever I think of cancel culture, like I said before, I just think that it's so ingrained into like our society today that it just is, like it just exists. Like it's not like it's just like an action now, I feel like, rather than like, a term, if that makes sense. I feel
Yeah,
like I'm explaining. Yeah, okay. I'm okay. I just want to be sure that you
yeah,
understand. Like what yeah. So but yeah, I don't know. It just seems like so separate from like accountability because it is on one hand,
right.
like because within cancel culture, there's like it just doesn't seem that like people make room for accepting that people make mistakes,
Yeah,
and that there are people like who are open and willing to learn, like because there's a really big difference between like you can just automatically tell the difference between people who don't want to understand something and don't want to do the work to understand it, and then like the people who actually do make mistakes and want to learn from them and need help, and sometimes you know that help can be like, well, you should look up stuff, or the help can be, here, let me give you a few books to read, or here, let me provide you with a few websites that you can maybe search, and then from there you can do your own research and kind of like jot things down and see what you learn and whatnot, like there's like it just seems like accountability and cancel culture, though they should come hand in hand, it just seems like they don't.
yeah. Well, I think, yeah. Well, I definitely agree, and I think that like, I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of different perspectives on cancel culture, and I think like, I mean, I agree with parts of each. Like, there's some people who think like that it doesn't exist, and that that cancel culture is just people calling people out for things that they should be called out for. And I think there are times that people should, that like, I mean, I think when it's a celebrity or someone like big, that like being like, hey, by the way, this person's not doing these things right, and like, somebody who is not somebody close to you, that you can reach out to and be like, hey, just so you know, I mean, I don't think they have to be close to you, somebody who you can reach out to. Like, I feel like if you can reach out to people to hold them accountable, that you should, um or have somebody else do it. Like, I think another big issue with accountability is that we always expect minorities to be the ones to defend themselves. And um, sorry, and that's that is also a big issue. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought, but um, let me rewind in my head. Um, um, but like right? Okay, so like I think that the way that we hold each other uh, accountable is currently is like well a big issue for me as a leftist and as somebody who somebody who believes in police abolition, like a big issue for me is the way that we are constantly policing each other rather than working to make sure that people are able to get better. Um, and I think that the majority of people um, have the chance to learn and to be better people. I think even people who have done like really, really bad things with like can get help and can um, learn from their actions um, and learn from being held accountable. And I think that we're not, we are so used to things being so black and white that we are not able to say this person did this really shitty thing, but they're still a person and I want them to get better. And I think that being able to say that helps both individuals involved, both the victim and the person who did the bad thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, whether people like stop trying to help others take accountability for their actions because they've come across so many people who don't.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes you wonder if that's why, like, that's the main reason. But yeah, I agree
Good point.
with like the fact that a lot of people kind of expect minorities to help them. And I don't know, like, it's I don't even know what to say about that because it's kind of like I feel like it's self-explanatory. Like
Right.
it's like a problem, with like whatever. I mean, but at this point, yeah, anyone can be canceled for like anything, but at the same time, I think that certain people have a privilege within cancel culture,
Absolutely.
like based on like status or like um yeah, like just like status or, race, but yeah, with like white people. um but yeah, like I mean, my brother was telling me yesterday that apparently Justin Bieber has like now sported like locks and yeah, so um yeah, I don't know. Like, and that's like one thing of like my brother was saying like, oh, like so canceled and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I mean, I guess he's canceled, but at the same time, no one stops listening to Justin Bieber. Like, you
Yeah,
know.
that's like some people say that that's like one of the things that some people say about why they think that cancel culture isn't real because there is no legitimate accountability. People don't lose their platforms. Um, People who are famous and rich and white and straight and cis and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, do not lose their platform. It's like somebody makes a post about them, a small group of people gets mad, and then they continue to do the same thing, and like nothing ever happens. So there's like that side of it, and then there's also like that I've seen like small creators who are queer, who are brown, who are et cetera, some kind of minority um, be completely screwed over and have like completely lose opportunities and lose their voice on issues. I mean, not lose their platform, you know, because of a mistake they made, however many years ago, or a mistake they made and took accountability for. And so there is such a huge disparity between what happens to like people with a lot of privilege and people who don't have a lot of privilege. And it's kind of bonkers.
Yeah, the whole like, I mean, yeah, there's just like somehow there's just like no space for people to like, you know, actually want to take accountability, like you were saying. And like there's so many different like celebrity oh, great. Yes, okay. I remember what I was gonna say. Like when like I remember last year at some point, Lana Del Rey like
Oh god.
came out with like that weird statement that was like talking about how like Megan Thee Stallion and SZA and Ariana Grande and like I don't know a few other like black singers and artists and like musical artists and whatnot. And people were like, "Why is Ariana?" Oh wait, no, she was also talking about Doja Cat, and then like I think there was like one or two other like female black like singers or like musical artists on there
Yeah.
besides like like I said Megan Thee Stallion, SZA, and Doja Cat and whatnot and people were like, how come Ariana Grande is like the only white person on here? Like I don't. But also at the same time, like I remember specifically people were telling Lana to like stay in her lane because it's like those people have like way different genres kind of or like a style than she does
Yeah.
because people were like, go back. Especially like POC were like, go back to singing like Lana. No one said that you weren't like whatever. Like you just have your own style of like singing about like we like different like sad like sex songs and whatnot. And it was like, oh. But yeah, like like people like because I only mentioned that to say I remember that people were really mad about that. And
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
remember seeing it on people's stories. And I mean, people still listen to Lana, like not as like a oh, like she's completely whatever. I mean, I'm sure that like maybe someone could have said something, maybe they didn't, or she just doesn't want to. But at the same time, people were like, how come you are judging like a bunch of different POC
And Ariana.
like yeah, like minus Ariana Grande, how come the rest of the people on your list are like black women, saying like being openly proud about like their sexuality and how they like, you know, doing whatever and being like proud about that and singing about that type of stuff, like
Right.
it's not fair to you, a white woman, to like criticize these other women of color who probably fought harder to get to where they are today and for you to like completely judge their craft and what they sing about just because you're sad like or upset that like I don't know, and
Well,
so
that's
people were like, oh my
the
gosh,
point.
Lana Del Rey canceled, and I was like, well, she got canceled today, so
Right. I feel
yeah.
like people throw out the word canceled, like I said at the like very beginning, like I said, like it's a buzzword because people just use it all the time, and it like doesn't really have a very clear meaning. But a lot of times people use it for any time that a celebrity has been called out. It's like that they didn't get canceled though. And so like when I say that I think like cancel culture is bad, I feel like people think that I'm like some like
Yeah.
neckbeard on the internet being like, my favorite abuser got canceled. Like, but that's not what what I mean is like the way that we don't hold people accountable and the way that we just throw things out there to gain. I
Yeah.
mean, it goes back to like I feel like through a lot of our lives we've talked about idol worship. I mean, we had one literally about idols. Our last one we talked about the royal family and with idol and like people worshiping them as if they were celebrities. And I think again it's like this weird people on people have this weird ownership of celebrities and also like obsession with celebrities. And it's just we get so caught up in like, ooh, this celebrity did this and this celebrity did this and this celebrity that and that celebrity that. And it's like, okay, why do we focus so much energy on talking about like bad things that celebrities did instead of like actually doing things that are productive? And it's also just like never anything, never anything comes from it. And if I mean, I think using these things as examples of like, hey, look how stupid this person looks saying this. Sorry, the dog is being taken on a walk and he is very loud. Um, he's very excited. Um, I think that, yeah, there's just, I'm not thinking about it. There's just a lot of weird, it's just a very complicated subject. It's very strange. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I just think that the problem with cancel culture is that a lot of people like to talk about, like, people like to gossip, but they don't actually like to confront certain things that statement that like people are gossiping about, or like the thing that people are gossiping about. Like, people don't actually like to address like what that means. They just like to be like, oh, so and so said this or so and so said that. Just like saying that someone is canceled is like a cop out to actually dealing with like the consequences of that stuff, whether like you're the one that's being canceled or whether you're the one that's doing the canceling. It's like, well, you're making it easier for this person to, because one of the downsides of like canceling someone is that, I don't know, you make it easier, I guess, in some cases for those same people to, like, I don't know, kind of like defend their actions, especially like people who are like, never want to, like, people who don't want to deal with their actions, like racist or homophobic, like people who are homophobic and just like all that other stuff. It kind of like when you cancel someone for that, I feel like it makes it easier for that person to like defend their actions. They're like, no, blah blah blah. And like, of course, like those people like who don't want to learn, unfortunately, I think, yeah, like, just don't need the attention in that way, because it's like if I'm giving you attention, then I'm just adding fuel to the fire.
I,
Even though like we still like, I mean, of course, like the issues still need to be solved, but the, like, I don't know. And from my perspective, I think how I see it is no one ever wants to take accountability because they're just afraid of admitting that they are wrong. Like, people have too much pride to admit that they're wrong. They never want to actually, I mean, there are people who either will see that they're wrong. There are also people who take like where it like it takes time for them to see what they did wrong, and then there are people who just never want to admit like that they're wrong because they in their mind think that they're right. And like I said, the problem with cancel culture is that people, like, they like to identify that there's an issue, but they don't want to do the work to solve that issue. Because if you take accountability, then that means that, oh, like, then there's all this stuff that I have to do in order to like make it so that I am correct next time, or so that I learn. And I just think like there shouldn't be any issue with like learning or, you know, admitting that you're wrong so that you can move to a better place. Like, there's always going to be issues, but people need to, I don't know, have the motivation and also, I don't know, the acknowledgement, I guess, that there's something that's wrong and that it needs to be fixed, because otherwise you can't really get anywhere else like beyond that, and then you're just stuck in a cycle of like saying that people are this and then saying people are that, and then no one ever takes accountability and no one ever like learns or try something different, like you're just stuck in this stupid repetitive cycle of like not doing anything except calling out people.
right. And I mean, it's such a gray area because it's like some things like I mean, when we talk about cancel culture, we're talking about everything from somebody getting canceled for saying like I'm trying to think of something not that's not like somebody saying something like that was like slightly insensitive to like people being called out for being a rapist and like those like I feel vastly different about the like about different things within cancel culture that are have this label of cancel put onto them. So it's like very complicated to just like say these general statements, but like One thing that I have noticed, like what you were saying made me think about like I just don't. I think that yeah, people get really defensive, and people don't want to learn when they're called out in a public platform like that, and it scares people away from accountability, and it scares people away from being part of the feminist community, being you know, it makes people not feel safe, not feel comfortable, and it prevents people from being willing to make mistakes. And I feel like a huge problem in and activism in leftist communities and in all of these people that want to make change is nobody's willing to make mistakes. So they're not saying anything, they're not doing anything because they don't want to say the wrong thing. And if we constantly prevent people from feeling like they can say things, we are I mean, honestly, a big issue for me is that it we make feminism and activism such a we turn it into like this private thing. Like you have to know all of these things. You need to learn all of these things. And you if you haven't read this book and you haven't done this, then you can't be a leftist, you can't be a feminist, you can't be whatever. And it's like we are preventing such a huge group of people from being part of it. And it's when you think about it, it's like actually kind of problematic in and of itself because like there are people who don't know English, who do not have access to these books, who don't read at a high enough level to be able to read these books, to be able to understand these things, to be able to and like there's no room for growth. And it prevents so many people from wanting to learn, wanting to be part of these things because we make it such a like a hoity-toity thing, and we don't leave room for making mistakes. And I think that's a two-way street. There's we don't let people make mistakes, but we also don't know how to accept when we made a mistake and take accountability. Um, like I know I've been called out on certain things, like just from like friends and stuff that I've said that has like um that they didn't you know that didn't sit right with them, and it's like right away you get defensive, and that's like something that we need to unlearn because it is so important to make mistakes. It is so important to be willing to say things and to be wrong. um and that's the only way that we ever grow and learn is by making mistakes. They tell you that in like elementary school. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think, like, I don't know. I feel like there's also an issue with actively trying to call out people, which is funny because, like, since cancel culture is so prevalent, I feel like there's also some people who are afraid of calling out people
Mhm.
because they're not sure if what they're about to call out the person for is something that's worthy or like worthy of being called out. And like, I don't know, like I think let me sorry, I'm trying to think of how to word this. I think there's been one time that I can recall that I've actively been called out for something, but it was by a friend and it was in private. But any other time, I think I've been just like labeled things because people don't want to try and understand like what I'm trying to say. Like, like there have been a couple times where like other people like this might sound like odd, but there have been like a few times, like not a few but a couple times where people of at like my age have called me like racist because, and this was like a few years ago, but there have been a couple times where I've been called a racist because I've said something and the way that people interpreted it was not like correct,
Mhm.
that, and it made them like question like what like, and so they called me that, and I remember like re-explaining to them what I was trying to say, and then they were like, oh, okay, I get you. like never mind that. And it's like, yeah, exactly, like there are people who are just willing to just be like not understanding unless you actively sometimes also are like, well, actually this is what I was trying to say. But
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, like they like were completely understanding after I said what I was trying to say, because they were like, yeah, like the like I don't know, like it was just like weird the way that you like said that this one thing. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not what I meant at all. I was like trying to say
Right.
this and that. I don't even remember what it was about, but yeah, like
Yeah.
so.
I knew what you're
but
saying.
but yeah, like with my friend that called me out, that was like in private, that was last year actually. I remember, like, I mean, because I come, well, just to be clear, so I have, there's context to the situation, obviously. I know that you know this, but like, I am part black, and like my family is black, like, and I of course like do my best, like always, to make sure that people understand that black people experience like very like real crisis type issues that no one really ever tries to, I don't know, pay attention to or try to like see as something that's a big deal. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, like, the essential like massacring of like black people by the cops, the pigs. But and I remember last year during the time that that no one really ever tries to, I don't know, pay attention to or try to like see as something that's a big deal. And what I mean by that is like myself like talk. Sorry. No, you're good. Yeah, what I meant, sorry, what I was going to say, sorry, I was like hearing myself talk. I was like, wait, what? I was like, am I like glitching? But no, sorry, what I was trying to say is that during the time that the George Floyd protests were happening, along with like the Breonna Taylor protests and whatnot, and people being oddly more aware of like violence against black people more so than usual. um like I had always, anytime that there was, of course, like on my social media page on Instagram, I always post activist related things on my story. And um yeah, but at the time and before that, I would post like videos of, like said incident, for example. And like in like past years when stuff like that happened, I would post like like videos of the incident in question. And but also at the time I would post like fashion related stuff and like photography related stuff. So like it would just be like page of like fashion, and then suddenly like a video of like violence and whatnot, and then like another like post about something. And my friend, she she texted me in a private, she DM'd me in a private message. And I remember she had told me that, like, while of course like she appreciates the fact that like I'm very active with what I post and whatnot, and that she knows that I mean well, like at the same time she said it can be very like difficult, not just to like scroll through your posts of like seeing like fashion stuff and then photography stuff, and then suddenly it's like a video of like so and so being attacked, or like a post that's like a red post of social justice stuff. But she also was just saying like it's really difficult to like see videos of, or like people post videos that showcase like violence against black people, whether it's by civilian, like racist civilians, or by the police, or just like in general, like. And so I took, well, first I like felt like really really bad. Like so like I felt like so deeply bad, like to my core, that I was just like, oh my god, like wow, like geez, like, I can't believe I never put that into perspective. Like, that just sounds like so unlike me of like not putting that type of whatever into like perspective and whatnot. And so I was just, I don't know. I took like a day or two to like myself to like think about it because it was weighing very heavy on my mind. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe that I actually posted that stuff. Like I'm actually ashamed of myself for posting that type of stuff. And even though she wasn't trying to like make me feel ashamed or like make me feel bad, like she was just like politely being like, "Oh, hey, like just wanted to let you know." Like I just still felt bad anyway because I was like, I should know better. Like, I shouldn't do that. Like, because that's not okay and that's wrong to like post videos of stuff that can be traumatic to like, you know, black folks who are like visually black. And so after that, I got onto Instagram and I like wrote like a long thing on my story about how like I apologize about like, recently a friend told me that I should take certain things and this into perspective and she politely called me out and it just made me think to myself like wow, like I should never have like posted that type of stuff. And you know, from here on out, like I said that I wasn't going to post any more videos showcasing like violence, whether it was like against black people or just violence in general. If so, like I would cover it up obviously, or I would, if it was like a thread, I'd post something else from that thread that wasn't like a picture or a video. And I said that on my story that I was deeply sorry and that I would not do that again and that I would also not post like fashion stuff anymore and whatnot so that people would know that it wasn't gonna be like photography, whatever, modeling, and then suddenly like an activist post. Just so like that people knew that I was going to I was just posting that and I posted that and I just said that yeah, I would definitely think about like in the future, like what exactly I should post and whatnot. And I don't know, I thought it was very helpful. And I was actually really glad that she did that because, yeah, like it just put, like, even though, like, I'm not actually, I'm not going to justify why I posted whatever. But yeah, so yeah, sorry, I keep saying, but yeah, and blah, blah, blah. Um, but yeah. So, uh, but yeah. So I, yeah, I was really glad that she did that at the end of the day because I wouldn't have, like changed what I posted if it wasn't the case. And I don't know, like sometimes I just get really surprised whenever other people don't call me out. Like, because usually I would think that people respect me enough or either know me well enough or feel comfortable enough, like, like just texting me because doing it in person is like one thing. And I know that a lot of people get like sensitive about that because they get nervous about actually speaking to a person. And I would think that over text, people would be more comfortable with possibly like if I made a mistake or if I like posted something that didn't have the right information, that people would at least like slide up and be like, hey, like, just so you know, this isn't like factually correct, or the way that this post is worded isn't the best, like, whatever. Or like, if I said something or if I posted a video or picture of something that I deemed not being like super whatever, and they were like, but yeah, that was like the only time really that I can recall that someone has privately messaged me to tell me politely that I should think about not posting that stuff in the future. So yeah, that was very long.
No, thank you. I completely, yeah, I agree. I think one thing that helps to try to remember Um, like I know that people have said things to me like, "Hey, when you said this thing, it made me feel like this," you know. And
Mm-hmm.
I would always, I still to this day always take those things very personally because it makes me really sad to, hurt people or make people uncomfortable or anything like that. And I think something that I try to remind myself is that that comes from such a loving place, that people won't, sorry, something made a noise. People won't say those things unless they care, um, unless they care about you being a better person, learning things, and you know what I'm saying. And I think that that is a difference between accountability and um, cancel culture is because accountability comes from a loving place. Even if you hate the person that you are holding accountable, it's still love for humans, humankind, the people that that person interacts with. Um, and so, something that I think is connecting it to police abolition, like we talked about for a second earlier, you know, the difference between like between policing each other and holding each other accountable. One way that we can do that is like a restorative justice system, which we've talked about before. But like rather than making it a public thing or making it a public thing and policing each other, like ostracizing people and removing people from society essentially by completely blacklisting them. Something that I think is useful is a restorative justice system. Like, so basically, having your community hold you accountable and saying, these are the steps that you need to take to make this better. And that has been done in other countries for, rather than a police system. So I think that it's something simple that we can do um, as sorry, as for all of the things that are happening. All for things. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um, Rather than policing each other and canceling people, holding each other accountable in that way. And I think that is something that we can use for everything on the spectrum that we talked about earlier of like spectrum of seriousness. Um, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but
No, you're all good. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, um, the whole, I don't know, like the whole idea, I think, of politely telling someone that um they've made a mistake, or instead of being like, oh, you're canceled, like, I don't know, oddly enough, I feel like I've never had that happen to me frequently, like and I don't know why, because like I'm not like, I don't know how to say it, like I'm not trying to get myself called out like repeatedly, obviously, because that would mean that there's an issue. But I don't know. I just think, like, based on like what I hear from other like friends or people that I know, like my best friend always tells me that there are times, like, obviously she's not called out frequently, like, because like I said, that would be odd, but like she'll say, like, that there have been a lot of times where she's said something that has been taken out of context or not, whatever, and then someone has like pulled her aside and asked her to either clarify what she meant because they didn't understand, or like they've taken her aside, or they have texted her separately and been like, hey, like, what did you mean by that? Like, it kind of sounds like this, like offensive, or it kind of sounds like you're saying this when I'm sure that you don't actually mean that. And I'm just wondering, like, if you could clarify or whatever, or just, like polite, like situations where she's been like politely called out. And I'm like, gosh, like, it just makes me wonder how many times, like, maybe I have possibly said or posted or done something and like no one has felt comfortable telling me that it was like possibly something that needed clarification, or maybe it was a mistake that I made. And I'm just like, God, like, because I don't know, like I'm not like begging to be like called out, but at the same time, I wish that there was a more, considering how prevalent cancel culture is, I wish that there was, I wish that what was more frequent within our society is pulling people aside and letting them know that, like, you know, maybe you shouldn't do this next time because other people might take it as this. Or you said something that kind of hurt my feelings, and I was just wondering if, like, you meant to say something else, or something just got like misconstrued or whatever. And I don't know, I just, because I don't really, a lot of what I experience is just like gossip and people saying things behind my back and being like, oh, blah blah blah, and not actually saying it to my face, whether it's about like, I don't know, just like not with like stuff that I've done wrong obviously, but because people don't like me, which is not an issue for me, but you know.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like sometimes cancel culture just becomes gossip. And I think that's
exactly.
a
Yeah,
big issue because we start to the the spectrum of seriousness gets more and more warped, and all of it is taken less seriously, because we're constantly being on social media, being a person in the 21st century, we are constantly being exposed to just horrible thing after horrible thing after horrible thing, and it all loses seriousness. And I think that is a huge problem with cancel culture. Is it's like, oh, here's another person who did this bad thing, and everyone's like, whatever, because we've seen it so many times. And I think that is like such a huge issue. I mean, we are constantly being exposed to horrible things, and we are more and more becoming numb to it. And I think that's really scary and bad. And that, that I wish more things. I mean, because of that, because we take things less and less seriously, we're less likely to hold people accountable and more likely to make a quick Instagram post because that's easier for people than to set up to think about, okay, here's the way this person needs to be held accountable, reaching out to the victim, reaching out to other people, finding out the whole story. It's easier for them to, make a post and then, you know, be involved in this drama, because instead of it being like this serious thing, it just becomes drama, it just becomes gossip, rather than something bad happened, somebody did something bad, somebody, and it's just a big issue. um should I read the interview that I did now?
yes,
Okay.
indeed.
So I put out a call to people who I know who have been canceled. A lot of people uh, responded, and but I only got one like full response, so that's the only one that I'm gonna read. A lot
Nice.
of people didn't understand what I was asking, um, but so I gave this person 4 questions, and this was their responses. And so I'm gonna put a content warning here, that this is a very serious example of what we've been talking about. I'm going to be talking about somebody who was called out and accused of rape. So that's the content warning here, conversations about that and about mental health. And in the caption, I'll put, actually, I think this will probably take us to the end since we're almost to the end. So I actually won't do that, just kidding. But yeah, so if you don't want to hear that, I would stop watching the video, or yeah, because that's probably, I'm going to read this and then that's probably going to close us out. But yeah, so I'm just going to read exactly what they sent me over Instagram. This is, an anonymous submission. So for the first question was, what did you get canceled for and how? They said, I was canceled for false rape allegations. I found out a few months after I had the encounter with that person that this was going on. It wasn't even him who was doing the canceling, more so people who I knew and considered friends who were just blocking me and removing me from group chats. Nobody went to me directly. I just had screenshots. The second question is, what was your reaction when you found out you were canceled? They said, my reaction was at first confusion, then it was terror, and then it was anger. Confusion as to what the hell was going on and who the allegations even stemmed from. Terror because of the power the accuser had and the fact that my social circle was crumbling without anyone even talking to me or asking me to take accountability or at least asking my side of the story. So there's that, accountability that we were talking about. Because there was no accountability. It was literally just people talking about this person without having any conversation with them. Or at least at least asking me my side of the story. Anger for a lot. I was angry at myself for associating with somebody who would turn around and call me a rapist when the encounter was completely consensual, and I was angry at the people around me for believing him over me when I had people who can and will vouch for me verbally, can and vouch for verbally hearing me ask for consent because they were in the other room when it went down. And just people knowing my past trauma with sexual assault and still believing I would subject another person to that. The next question was, did it change your view of cancel culture? They said, I guess honestly, it made me rethink how we socially deal with allegations, like accountability should be paramount. But nobody was holding me accountable. They just cut me off or wouldn't even give me the time of day. Accountability should include a discussion. It should be a dialogue and result in changed behavior, right? I know how important it is for victims to feel safe in coming out about abuse, but I think an anonymous Instagram account is the wrong way to do it, which is how it was done in my case. So somebody anonymously posted that they were anonymously posted saying that this person was a rapist. Um, what do you wish had happened differently is the next question. I wish everything had happened differently. I wish I had people ask me questions instead of begging to share my side of the story. I wish I had people who wanted to evaluate both sides and not just look at a picture of me with rapist pasted over it and blindly believe it without knowing either side of the story. Or the other side, as well, I had people who immediately sided with me and it felt good in the moment, but it wasn't the way it should have been done. So that was what they shared with me. And so I think, that's really heavy. That's like, and that's just, really encompasses the things that we were talking about. And that obviously is on the more serious side of what we were talking about. I want to say if that person is who shared that story with me is watching, thank you for sharing your story with us. Yeah, and that's just, that really encompasses what we were talking about, with it not being a discussion, people hearing things and wanting to be included in this, kind of drama and doing no research. I think it's really important that we, I will always trust victims. Like when somebody comes forward about something that's happened to them, I will always trust them unless it is proven that it was false. It's just this. I'm glad that this was submitted because I think that is one of those gray icky areas that we try to avoid completely. Nobody really wants to talk about the gray areas. So I appreciate that we got to talk about this story. There's a lot of gray area in all of this that we talk about, and yeah, I think I've rambled for a while. Melora, is there anything you want to say on the subject?
Um, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, yeah, for who sent that to you, yeah, I thank you for trusting, uh, not only just Piranha, but also me as well. Because I'm sure that even admitting any of that is very difficult. Um, so yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, I think in terms of like, yeah, the person that sent that, I think also in general, if we're gonna like, since I'm gonna specifically relate it to what the interview, but there's definitely, yeah, there's always like a gray area, especially around like false rape accusations,
Yeah.
because I just think, of course, now, like, of course, like there are men who are like, oh my God, like, what can I do? What can I say? And like, or just not even just men, but like other
Not
people,
knowing
like,
after
yeah,
the
like,
after the Me Too movement, everyone was like, I can't do anything anymore. It's like, well, what were you doing before?
I know. And yeah, like, I just think now everyone is like, oh, well, if I do this, then I'm just going to get called a rapist. And, or like, even if I like, do something small, like hug the person, then they're going to cry rape or, it's like, I think what's, I think, like people, like, unfortunately, I think that people kind of take hold of something like onto a movement and then use it to their own advantage to like, I don't know, subject other people who haven't done things. And I think that that should definitely be acknowledged more, you know? Like, sorry, if that came out weird, yeah, but sorry. What I mean is like,
No, I know.
it
I
makes it, especially with like things involving sexual assault and the Me Too movement, it becomes very difficult to know whether someone is telling the truth because there are people out there who do falsely accuse other people of rape. And I think that unfortunately, those situations are oddly taken way more seriously than when someone's actually been victimized
absolutely,
or is
absolutely.
a survivor, which I just think is odd, especially when you wouldn't know at first hand if the person is lying or not and they just come out and say it, you
Well,
know?
I think,
Like,
and people really like to use those like very few stories. Um, to people like to use fake, like very few false allegations, which the statistics show it's like less than 1% of allegations aren't true. People like to use those to be like to not try not to believe other allegations, but what people really ignore, people love to bring up false allegations you know, to invalidate real experiences. And I think what people really are ignoring is, well, the grayness of all of it, but also that like how rarely it happens. And when it does happen, it is almost always either a black person or a queer person who is being falsely accused, and that's what I've always seen.
yeah.
um, and I'm not saying that based on a statistic or anything like that. I'm just saying from my personal experience, people that I have known and seen that happen to, in media and in things that I've read and in and I think that that's a really interesting thing to consider. And I think, I mean, everything needs to be. I think nothing is as simple as we'd like to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Icky.
just, oh, sorry.
I said it's icky.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because I actually recently did an art project on like the gray area of things
Mhm.
my because my stepdad, whenever I usually talk about things with him or even my mom, like I remember most often than not, he usually tells me that, there's always like a gray or more nuanced, you know, thing within something else. You just have to like be willing to like look and explore like both sides of something, or you have to be willing to look within like the middle of that situation and be like, oh well, actually, and stuff like that. And I think always, like you were saying, like with the gray area, like there is always a gray area that I think people tend to just not know about, or choose to not notice, because what would that mean if we do notice it? Change? I don't know.
Right.
Like actual change?
Right.
Like, so, and yeah, I think people at the end of the day, or sorry, not people, I don't know what I'm saying, my stepdad. My stepdad, yeah, I've always liked that he says that, because it definitely encourages more interesting conversations with people, but it also kind of helps me see, and like that there's always something else. It's never just like it's never usually like one simple answer. I shouldn't say it's always not one simple answer, because there are some things that do have a simple answer, but most, like, there are things, sorry, my point was that there are some things that do have like a more nuanced thing within it that people should always pay attention to. And I think, yeah, people just don't usually like to talk about it or notice it or know about it. And yeah, it's a problem.
It is a problem, and I mean, again, I think it's a problem that we could solve with restorative justice. And this is just inspiring me to like start a restorative justice program. Like I really want to do that now, because like what this person shared was, that someone was saying this about them anonymously, and it was like coming from an anonymous source who like it was just, there were layers of removal from the actual like people involved. And I think that that is like we see things online, or we see things, wherever, um and just anything we like, people just see things and take them as fact. And it's like the fact that no one questions, like, oh, this is coming from an anonymous source. I mean, and I think, I make that mistake too a lot, to just like see things and take them as fact. um I mean, I'm like, so many examples are just running through my mind right now of like things that I've seen go viral online and then just end up being totally fake. I mean, I'm thinking one example that comes to mind is during the George Floyd protests, there was that Minnesota Freedom Fund, I think it was, that people were donating to. And that was like the most common um, donation thing that I saw. And I remember I donated to it, and I sold art to be donated to it. And then found out like and this was like everyone was sharing that one. And then like a couple months later, everyone was like, yeah, so where did all that money go? And like the company, or not company, the organization, like only bailed out like some amount of people. Like the money wasn't going to that. Like, I don't know. That was just one example that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And how like nobody did their research, including myself, on that. And I think that that happens a lot. It's like nobody does the
Yeah.
research. Nobody thinks critically about things. And that goes back to like what we were talking about at the very beginning, like with that groupthink mentality. And yeah, I've been rambling for a lot. And I think, yeah, we've gone over per usual. Um, yeah, this was a really intense and saturated conversation. I feel like, you know, we barely touched on, like we just skimmed the surface of this subject. It's a really big subject with a lot of nuance. I think that all opinions on it are have validity to them, and if anyone is watching on YouTube, yeah, whenever like comment your opinions. I'd really love to see other people's opinions on this because I'm not saying that my opinion is the right one. I'm certain in 2 years I'll have a completely different perspective. It'll be interesting to go back and watch these videos in a couple of years and just be like, oh, actually, I don't feel that way at all anymore because and I think that that's a really interesting and beautiful thing. I think we're all always growing and learning. And don't cancel me for my opinions on cancel culture. I would love to hear other people's perspectives. So if you have one that is different or if you agree, let us know. Yeah. Any last thoughts, Melora, before we?
Yeah, yeah, you kind of said it all, but yeah, like always try to like think outside the box, I guess, when it comes to like certain issues, always try to look at the gray area and don't be afraid of looking at it. But also in terms of cancel culture and accountability, like be open to like change and like helping others, but also like helping yourself if you make a mistake and not like, reacting in like a terrible way if someone tells you that you've done something that's not cool or if you said something that's not really like whatever, and I think yeah, always take accountability and don't be afraid to admit that you've done something wrong because
Yeah.
if you don't, cycle.
Yep. I think that is that sums it up really well. Everyone makes mistakes, and some of those mistakes are worse than other mistakes. And sometimes people do have things that aren't mistakes too. And I think, yeah, if you are able to hold people accountable, if you have that, if you are a privileged person, which I mean, we all are in differing ways, but if you see somebody doing something that does not affect you personally, so if you are a white person and you witness racism, it is your job to learn to hold people accountable and to challenge those things. And if you have the opportunity to do these things in your community, that's really great. If you look up restorative justice and figure out how you can implement that into things that are happening in your community, if you have, if that comes up, I think that's it. I think that's the yeah.
Don't be afraid to call people out and
And
help.
don't be afraid to be called out. It's important to learn. Don't get mad at people if they tell you they disagree with you or that you did something that offended them. Don't get mad at them. Just listen. Just listen and take some time to think about it. And that's that on that. Thanks everyone for watching.